Today we're going to discuss moderators versus abstainers when it comes to diet. Do you know which one you are? What's shaking, bacon? So in today's video, we're going to discuss the importance of understanding what type of personality you have and how it's going to affect your way of eating. So this has been a journey for me. It took me years and years to realize which one I was, an abstainer or moderator. I didn't pay any attention to it all through the years. Subconsciously I knew. Every now and then I might turn around and say, oh, I could do this or I could do that. When it comes down to it, yeah, it's a really tough thing to have to admit to yourself if you're an abstainer. I think there's a lot more people out there that think they're moderators that are really abstainers, and they have to find out the hard way that they're really abstainers and they have to stick to a particular way of eating very strictly. So a good way to start this off is I like to compare myself to a smoker or alcoholic. You don't hear about smokers cutting back to just one cigarette a day or one drag a day, or they say to themselves, you know what, I don't smoke at all from Monday to Saturday, but on Sundays, boy, do I let loose. And then I allow myself to have this amount of cigarettes, or the same with alcoholics. You just can't do that. If you have a problem with that substance, the people who have those problems typically have an addictive personality. It's one thing to know you have it. It's another thing to admit you have it. I knew I had an addictive personality for years, but to truly put it to the test and try and manage it, that's when I found out how far my addiction went. Through the years, I was up and down with my diet. I did lots of different ways of eating, different soup diets. When I was a teenager, I lost a ton of weight, not through diet at all. I ate like a fiend. I lost probably at least 150 pounds through exercise. They say you can't out-exercise a bad diet. I'm living proof that you can. I did it, and you might argue, well, you had the metabolism of a teenager. No, I didn't. You don't get to be 350, maybe even closer to 400 pounds with a metabolism of a teenager. I had a really rotten metabolism, and I was an active kid, but probably not active enough for the amount of food I was eating, and probably I had hormone problems or could have been fighting something I didn't realize. So every now and then, as I was putting weight back on in my 20s, I found I would try for a week or two. I would lose some water weight in the first week, and then I would lose a bit of, a little bit of volume around my stomach. It wasn't too bad. It was relatively easy for me to just drop 10, 15, 20 pounds at a time. But doing that, I yo-yoed up quite a bit to the high 200s. And by the time I was 23, I think I got up to about 290. I did this one very low carb way of eating. It was right before I started college, and I got in pretty good shape. When I was in college, I went back to a bad diet, and I found it very stressful. And I ended up putting on 50 pounds while I was in college. And then I put on another 50 pounds after I was done college. So after I was done college, I did a way of eating, and it was once again this low carb way of eating. I lost quite a bit of inches on my waist just through this way of eating and proper exercise. It wasn't sustainable. It was just enough carbs to keep the addiction going. Now, I didn't realize I had a carbohydrate addiction, but I did realize that there was a problem with my mentality with eating. As I mentioned in an old video, when I was in college, I got out of an exam, went back to my car because I was done for the day, and I stopped at a coffee shop, stopped at a Tim Hortons, and I got this triple chocolate brownie, put it in my mouth, and I remember reacting just like a smoker does with their cigarette after they've had a stressful 2 hours or 3 hours between cigarettes. And I took a bite, and I automatically went, oh, and I calmed down. And I remember thinking, that's what smokers do. This isn't good. So I didn't realize it was a sugar addiction problem. I thought it was just some sort of emotional eating, which of course it was, but there was also a sugar addiction to that. And I didn't realize that for years. I got into my 30s and I started doing a way of eating where it was more of a bodybuilder's diet, and it was really good. I got really good results. I recommend it to anyone who thinks carnivore is a little too extreme for them, but it's a tough way of eating because you have to have 3 snacks, 3 meals throughout the day, protein, carbs, and fats with each meal. And, it's a lot of work. It's tough to stick with. And that's where that one wasn't manageable for me. It doesn't manage your blood sugar as well as a carnivore diet. When you're fat adapted on a ketogenic or carnivore diet, your blood sugar is nice and stable. It's like this all day. When you eat lots of other ways of eating, your blood sugar is constantly going up and down through the day, sometimes more and sometimes less, depending on the way of eating that you're doing. when it comes to a carnivore diet, for me, abstaining seemed to work really well. So in the winter of 2013 and 14, I ended up seeing this doctor out of town who treated sugar addiction and carbohydrate addiction. And I remember thinking, okay, I'll give this a shot. And he put me down to an extremely low carb diet. The only thing I was allowed to have in it was lettuce, pickles, and beef or chicken or pork. But it had to be extremely lean if I had beef. So it was almost a no fat diet as well. And I lost a lot of weight doing that. But over time, I slowly started to put that back on. Now, each week he reintroduced a different carbohydrate. And I remember after a year, I had a little serving of ice cream, something you would give a 4-year-old, just a itty bitty scoop of ice cream, just a little bit. And what happened was, afterwards, I was like, this is what everyone else feels like. I had it. I'm not craving more. I was satisfied with the portion size. I didn't think about it all the next day. I didn't want to go out and buy some more. I thought, this is pretty cool. This is after a year of me doing this way of eating. So I thought, I'm going to do this once a week. And that worked great. And then by the second month, I tried it twice a week, on a Sunday night and a Thursday night. No problems. The third month, I went 3 times a week because I thought, okay, I'm doing pretty good with this. The whole point of this was to reintroduce carbohydrates and sugar back into your diet. I went for the 3rd time on the 3rd month, and my cravings all just came back. My portion sizes went out of control. I was having junk food all day, every day. It wasn't easy to admit, but I was like, wow, I learned my limit. I'm a once a week guy because twice a week is too close to 3 times a week, and 3 times a week is when I slid. So I learned after a year of abstaining, I was a once a week guy. So I know myself better now that I've learned I can't even do a once a week thing because it becomes a slippery slope. And it's going back to that smoker's mentality. Some people just can't cut down. They have to abstain. So if you say to yourself, oh, I could never cut out bread. Well, have you ever tried it? Do you truly know if you do it, if you'll have that difficult of a time? Because if you do think you'll have a difficult time, something simple out of your way of eating, like bread or pasta or something like that, then maybe you have a bit of a sugar addiction yourself. So, that's a carbohydrate. That converts to sugar in the body. That's going to mess with your insulin and blood sugar levels. So we want to make sure that we're being honest with ourselves here. That's the whole point of this video. This is World Carnivore Month. I'm filming this in 2022. And when you're trying this way of eating for the first time especially, you're going to find out quick if you're an abstainer or if you're a moderator. Some people, like my father, he's 80 years old and he's learned in the last 5-6 years of his life, finally, that late in life, how to moderate. He's cut back a lot on carbohydrates, but he still has some. He has a bit of whatever he wants. I can't. He's a big believer in it. He said, moderation's the way. Well, I agree. For some people, moderation's the way. Maybe even most people, moderation's the way. But for me, I can't moderate. I just can't. I've tried over and over again. And it got to the point where I learned in 2020 how bad it was. And I had to put my dog down. I did a bunch of emotional eating, did it for a few months straight. It really was difficult for me to go through. And I went right back to all this junk food after doing carnivore for a few months by that point. And I was doing quite well with it. I recognized about a month into it, like, this is pretty crazy. I was making meals of ice cream and pizza. Like, it was bad, constantly bad too. It wasn't once a day, it was constant. All my meals were junk food. And after a month, I thought, this is not good. I gotta stop this. Month 2, at the end of it, I realized I didn't even slow down. Wow. I tried to stop and I didn't even slow down. Month 3, I noticed the same thing. I was like, this has been going on far too long. It was 4 months of living off junk food. I learned I had a more serious problem than I realized. And at that point, there was a bit of a slap in the face for myself, almost like an out-of-body experience. My dad quit smoking 45 years ago. And he said, it's like he realized one day that cigarette owned him and how bad it owned him. From Montreal to Toronto, and he had a cigarette in his hand. It was in between the cars, and it was January, and he was smoking it, and he just realized, what am I doing? I'm freezing out here. Flicked it, never looked back. Never. Now, he quit once before for about 6 months or so. It was a few years before that. but he went back to it. Lots of people have triggers, and smokers, they have drinking sometimes. They go out with their friends, they have a beer, they love having a cigarette with it. And I had to admit to myself that I couldn't manage it. That's when I learned how far gone I got with that 4 months, sort of a bender really, that I just couldn't manage carbohydrates. I tried managing the frequency of my carbohydrates. I tried managing the portion sizes of my carbohydrates. I tried managing both at once. I tried judicial amounts here or there throughout the day. I tried it once a week, once every second day. I tried it lots of different ways. None of them were sustainable for me. What is sustainable for me is a zero carb way of eating. It's just manageable. And I'm not recommending you do it. If you want to, that's great. But what I am recommending is you learn what type of personality you have, and that way you can apply whatever way of eating you need to your personality. Now, if you're trying this on World Carnivore Month, you're gonna learn fast if you're an abstainer or moderator. If you find this easy, I find it really easy to abstain. What's it like abstaining from this food? I have to say it's really easy. Once I get to this point, after a few months of abstaining from carbohydrates and sugar, I don't feel restricted. Though I'm restricting the types of food I'm eating, I don't feel restricted at all in my day-to-day life. I have a more open life. I can run upstairs. I can go for a jog. I can do all sorts of different ways of moving around, and I don't get winded as easily because my body's just not as inflamed. It's like I have more opportunities in life. I'm not as tired throughout the day. I have balanced energy through the day. It's not just an abundance of energy. I have balanced energy through the day. So it's really opened up a lot of areas of my life. I physically feel better. When you physically feel better, you can tackle more things in life. Looking back, eating the way I did before, I was a slave to food. I was a slave to it. I was a slave mainly to sugar, not so much food. I was a slave to sugar. And it controlled me. So how restrictive was my lifestyle if I was always thinking about what I was gonna have for dinner that night or lunch? Ooh, and giving into every temptation like a smoker with a cigarette. I would give into it and I would go have junk food or just something unhealthy for any meal I wanted whenever I wanted. You can't eat that way. Some people can handle that and give themselves judicious little amounts here or there, and that's great. One of the other reasons why I don't feel restricted on this way of eating is I'm always satisfied. When you have enough fat in your diet and protein in your diet, you feel satiated. You may feel restricted in the beginning because you're going through withdrawal from carbohydrates. So the first week can feel rough. After that, you start to feel better and better. And at the end of the first month, you're doing pretty good. You wouldn't want to go hang out at someone's house and have dinner because you're probably going to eat something that's at their place, but it takes a while to get to the point where you're sort of bulletproof and it doesn't bother you. At least that's what I've experienced. What we want to do is try and make sure you understand yourself, know yourself. What type of personality are you? Find a way of eating that works best for you. For me, carnivore is an easy option. The one thing it's done more than anything is managed inflammation in my body. You get those results in the first few days. And that's what I find really nice about this way of eating. The more honest you are with figuring out what your needs are and your habits and your schedule and how you can work your way of eating into that, or any way of eating more manageable. Especially a carnivore diet, because the nice thing is your world doesn't revolve around food. You eat and then you're satisfied, and then you'll find you're not hungry again for hours and hours and hours. And it's a nice feeling when you're not revolving your whole world around food. It really lightens the load through the day because it's a simple way of eating. Thanks for listening to this video. If you can, give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the channel. It really supports the channel. Thanks for listening. Take care.